Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button, Season 4, Episode 21 / Episode 152. I am your host, Alejandro / Alex, for the Season Gaming audience, and to me, a special guest has finally arrived that I wanted on the show since I brought in two of his podcast co-hosts that always bring the spice to his show. Ainsley Bowden, the editor-in-chief of Season Gaming, aka my boss, since I started writing there.
No.
How you doing, Ains?
I'm good, man. I'm no one's boss. We just all talking games. I'm good. I'm good. It's been we've been trying to do this for a while, so excited to hang out with you finally and chat. So it'll be good.
Oh yeah. So from Season Gaming now, I had you, I've had Steve, I had Zach, and now I have Eric. So and Brian. So I'm only missing now Elu.
You gotta get Elu's rare. He's only been on like one or two shows ever.
Yeah. I think it was in the last of a spoiler cast, right? I think that you guys
might have been. Might have been. Yeah.
I started looking at some of the backlog of Season Gaming when I became like a bigger fan to see like all the content. So I was like, oh, that's Elu. So,
yeah, it's rare. Yeah.
So yeah, how you doing, Ains? So for
I'm good, man.
Yeah, for everyone that doesn't know you, you can like give like a quick introduction.
Like, absolutely. So as Alex said, I'm the head of Season Gaming. Founded that back in 2015, which is crazy to believe now. But yeah, I've been a little older, so been gaming since the early 80s. Have lived, breathed games my whole life. I've sold them, traded them. I mean, anything you can think of with video games, I've probably owned or had at some point. I play on everything, love everything. As Alex will tell you, we talk about everything at SG constantly, all different facets. And I think the great thing is, especially with Alex and Eric, a really good mix of gamers at SG. So with SG, we try to we essentially just cover gaming from the passionate, independent, non-monetized viewpoint. So a bunch of us just get together. We're all close-knit together. We write reviews. We write articles. We run podcasts, obviously. But it all comes from a place of just pure love of gaming and the industry. We're not, we're not swayed by any, concerns with clickbait or any of that nonsense. So that's the goal of Season Gaming. And Alex here, who your host, has been a fantastic addition. So credit to you, my friend.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been an honor. Being like have like an official like masthead to finally do something that I always wanted to do since I was like little. Like the whole idea of like play games and write about them, because that's what's funny, because I'm from El Salvador and like English is not my first language.
Sure.
So like reading reviews was what helped me like strengthen my English. Like just about it, because I was always a big gamer even when I was younger. So eventually like realizing, people like talk critically about games, like they analyze them and all that. And most of the analysis I read was in English. So that really helped me during my formative years. So eventually like I was always like writing back in the day, like IGN used to do reader reviews, like old school IGN. So I used to write some of them, and all of that got lost because the site went through like 10 million redesigns. So most of my written stuff is like gone. But that's kind of how I got like my little like interest in trying to do that. And then I'll never forget that night when I was finishing the Resident Evil DLC. And then I was like, who reviewed that? I was like, I finished it. Let me see who reviewed it. And Zach reviewed it.
Okay.
And I remember you posted it, and I just hit you. I was like, great. I was looking for a review for it. like see, no one has reviewed it.
Yeah. It was good timing. As I told you, we're always looking for people kind of with the passion, just to your exact point, just that want to write about games from the joy of writing and talking about games. That's it. And we've had, obviously, you join. We had Ray just join, a week ago. And I really like our crew. It's a really good group of people. I'm pretty selective. So I've had quite a few people reach out at various points, and I've read their stuff, and I'm just like, you don't fit, man. Like, it's not, it's just like you're clearly writing from a point of view has a slant, and that's not what we're going for, So I think I don't know, I pat ourselves on the back a little bit. I think we do a pretty good job.
Oh yes, and it's been a blast, and I can't wait to do another full year. It's as I'm like a year and a half now, like since I joined.
Time flies.
Yeah,
I cannot believe it's been 8.5 years since I found it. We didn't do much right at the start. It was just me. But we really kind of kicked it into gear early 2017. So even just thinking that, it's been 7.5 years, which is it's unbelievable. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So.
And you've grown enough that you get to go to the showcases now. Like you get like those invites, like what's coming up for you.
Yeah, it's crazy. Be in LA next weekend, which is crazy as well. I fly out next Thursday, and I'll be at Summer Game Fest, IGN, Giant Bomb, Ubisoft. Still haven't gotten that Xbox invite. I don't know what's going on over there.
So but it was weird because they invited you last year, right?
Since 2019.
Yeah.
I've been media with Xbox since 2019, so they're just, I don't know what's going on with them, honestly. But regardless, it'll be a great weekend. And the crazy thing is I've actually talked, to some of the Xbox execs and stuff that I know to get together, have a drink, have dinner. And it's like, I didn't get invited to the showcase. Oh well, whatever.
Yeah. I think I made the joke that got lost in our chat that I was like, are they like punishing us because Starfield never got the review?
Hey, they didn't give us. That's another weird one because it was Bethesda. Like, we get all the Xbox games, but Bethesda, they went through a different PR, and for whatever reason we didn't get Starfield.
Yeah. So and usually it's like if they don't give us a code, it's kind of like up to us if we want to review it. That's kind of like
exactly.
So I really like.
Well, that's such a big game. Like it's like all the Starfield hype, as you know, was at launch, and it was like. Putting a review out 2-3 weeks after launch to do it properly like we do is tough sometimes. It's a lot of work for little audience sometimes. So we have to, that's one of those things we have to kind of play by ear as a smaller site.
Yeah, because I remember also you got Phantom Liberty early, also around that time. So you kind of that sidetracked you.
Yes,
I remember.
It did. Yeah, I got that. That was a very nice get because I'm a big Cyberpunk fan, and that was a fun one to review for sure. I totally forgot I reviewed that.
Yeah, it's so many reviews. I mean, you just recently finished Hellblade also, which you got to review.
Finished Hellblade last week. Yep. That was a good one. Luckily, that was a much shorter game, so it was a little easier because they only gave us 5 days, maybe. Yeah, not even a week. Yeah, it was. It wasn't much. I'm looking forward to now. I just put in the request formally. I don't even think I told you guys. Put in the request formally last night and spoke to them about Shadow of the Erdtree.
Ooh, yeah, because you did you reviewed early Elden Ring, right? So
I did, yeah. And as you know, my beginner's guide that I did for that it's like Google page 1, which is rare for us. Like, it's a very big, largely shared. Yeah, so it's got
that helped a lot, like early on, because I was not liking Elden Ring, like starting it out, because Souls had always been kind of like that franchise that, other than Bloodborne, I always kept trying, and I always kept bouncing, but Elden Ring's like incredible like reception. I was like, I'm gonna break through, and this time I'm gonna look help. And your guys was one of the first that.
That's awesome.
Yes,
I forgot that. Yeah, I know we've talked about that before. I'd forgotten, but I've had a lot of people reach out to say that, and it's great. I went back to it today because funny enough, they said Shadow of the Erdtree codes are limited, and they want proof that you've covered Elden Ring previously. And so obviously I sent them my review link. Yeah, I sent them my guide link. I was like, dude, like. It's hard to find a normal outlet, like a full range outlet, meaning we're not just talking from games, right? But it's hard to find a normal outlet that talks about Elden Ring as much as we do. So, like, come on. So
they can also look at the Game of the Year, right? As we did it in 2022. It was like 2/3 of the page was just Elden Ring praise, where we all had to see the paragraph.
Yeah, that's true too. I forgot about that. Yep.
Yeah, definitely can't wait to talk.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, it's been great though. Like with you and Eric and Steve and now Ray and Brian and the other Ray. So we have female Ray, and we have male Ray. He's banging out a bunch of indie games, which is awesome. And our review kind of schedule has been flying. I forget what we're up to now, but we're approaching 200 for the site all time, which is. If you just think about that from an independent site with, contributors, that's a lot of reviews. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. And this year starting the bigger like video push, which is kind of like I'm waiting for a new video card to come my way, because I kind of want to capture more video, because my Elgato's not doing the trick for me. So I was like, okay, I've been doing a lot of the written reviews, but now I'm seeing a lot of the video side that I'm like, that's the one area I feel like I'm being left behind. So I definitely want to like step up. Yeah. Since it's I know how to edit. So
yeah. It's fun to do once you get into it. It's more work, of course, but it's neat. It's especially neat if the YouTube algorithm is kind to you and it kind of picks up some views, which is always hit or miss with YouTube. You know how that goes.
Oh yes, especially nowadays. So
yeah, it's weird right now. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely can't wait to talk more games with you. But just kind of like as a reminder that this is the X-Bottom podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Thursdays from 10 a.m. onwards, God willing. Available in the YouTube channel Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at tinyurl.com/escapegaming. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. And a little asterisk because of when we're recording this and some important stuff that's coming out later. This will be like a later posting. And you'll see why it was a later posting when this goes live. Mm-hmm. So, Ainsley, now it's time to talk about the games that we've been playing currently. So, as you're the guest, tell me how much Diablo 4 you've been playing.
A lot, dude. It's bad. It's real bad. I need help. So for those who don't know, I reviewed Diablo 4 for us. I am a big Diablo guy. I'm older. I played Diablo 1 back in the early 90s or whenever it launched. Yeah. And I have thousands of hours in the Diablo games over the years. And so Diablo 4 was a huge release for me. Reviewed it in the first, I think, month that Diablo 4 released. Between the review and playing, I did almost 300 hours.
Yeah. And all that got wiped, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I wasn't getting much sleep. And anyway, I played very briefly in season 1 and I haven't touched it since. Just so many other games and stuff going on. So season 4, they did this whole revision of the many systems, including loot and stuff. And I got back into it, went back to my druid, and I have become fully addicted again. I'm playing every day, every night. I'm back. I think I hit 91 or 92 with my druid. So I'm approaching my first 100 character. And I'm just loving it.
XP gains, right? I think that's what I kind of heard.
It's easier to level now, and there's more incentive to level. I won't go into all the details, of course, but like, you know, you get a lot of higher level gear now, but you're constantly like breaking it down to upgrade your codex and to get materials, and there's tempering now, so you can adjust gear more than you used to be able to, and it's more aligned with your build. And there's a lot of cool combinations you can do with the affixes, and they basically made it so that instead of one of the mistakes I say that a lot of companies do, and not just ARPGs, but in a lot of like games where you put a lot of time in, is developers seem to try to balance it so intensely, and in doing so, it becomes either not as fun or grind, right? You just have players where it's like I love this game, but it's like, it feels like every day I'm logging in to do something and and I think really what they've done here is they took a step back and said, look, it's okay if the players are overpowered. It doesn't, just let them go smash stuff. You know, they have fun doing it.
There's no PvP. I always say that, but there's no PvP, let us go wild.
Yeah, and that, you know, it has a PvP component, but it's so minor in the scope of what Diablo really is. And so basically what they did is they added all these affixes, tempering. All the classes have various ways you can play them now, which are just really endgame powerful. And they just added more endgame content. So just go over here and do this. Helltides are better. They have the pit now. They have, you know, the Tree of Whispers and all this stuff. And it's just like, it's just fun, you know, like every day you log in and you're playing stuff, and you're not only having fun playing because you can create the characters that are just destroying things, and it's a blast. Like the gameplay loop is very fun, but you always feel like in some form there's a level of progression. And it's really well done. So it's a great foundation for the expansion and new class, which should be still coming later this year. So
November, right? I think that's kind of like where they were saying they were aiming, or just
supposed
like
to be fourth quarter. Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, that's been, because I did Hellblade last week, so that was pretty much my focus. And then just some mix of other things. Other than that, I played some Hades 2 in early access, which is great so far. I got into I've got a whole bunch of betas that I've gotten into that some I can talk about, some I can't. One is 33 Immortals, which I haven't even played yet, just in time. I've got another one that's an Xbox game coming out I can't talk about. And then just, you know, my usual stuff, which is PUBG, Halo, Rocket League, the live service stuff. So
yeah, you're basically kind of like from SG, one of the more heavy live service players.
I do.
Alongside Eric, kind of.
Yes. Yeah, me and Eric, I would say, of the group at SG, are probably the two most like competitive, multiplayer focused people. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, that train, like, I tried sometimes to do some of the competitive stuff, like X Defiant recently. I got to download it on Xbox just to kind of give it a try. And it was like, this feels fine. Like, it actually feels more like Call of Duty than I was expecting it to. It feels very bare bones. At least kind of how it feels like. It was like a very simple in menus, very simple in like what it currently offers. But I'm like, they're just starting. They say this is like a pre-season, so it's like definitely TBD on that whenever they finally start like releasing their the live service delivery of season 1 and how they're gonna monetize it further and all of that. But I'm like, at least it feels very different from Siege, which is I was like,
yes.
I thought Siege, it was gonna be more tactical because it's coming from Ubisoft. So, but
I played X Defiant early on when in one of the playtests they were doing, and you can tell they're kind of going for that more Call of Duty focus. I mean, that's what it's aimed at. Siege is interesting to me. I don't know about you. Siege is like one of the most played games in the world. It's top 10 every month, on PS and Xbox. I have my son and my stepson love Siege. I have never been able to get into it. It doesn't do anything for me at all.
Tough. It's like so tough. Like tough, the time to kill is like so like minuscule that like any tiny error like destroys, especially if you come from like you that come from Halo. That's more like the bouncing back
arena.
And forth and the arena shooters, or me that I come with Destiny. That's kind of like an in between of something that kills you fast, but also has arena sensibility. So it's like Siege is always super tough, but it's always one that's fun to watch people that are super good at it. Just keep on to it. So what's funny is that X Defiant reminded me a lot of Black Ops 4, like in that time to kill it, like without having like a syringe to heal you, like how it was in Black Ops 4. That was kind of like the big meta shift they did for that one. That the way they do like the hero characters, the time to kill with like the health and all that, I was like, yeah, this is very Black Ops 4 because I remember playing that one a lot. So
nice.
Let's see. Let's see if it succeeds for them.
Yeah, I hope so. I think we've talked about this in our chat at SG. Is like I'm Ubisoft, in my opinion, gets a bad rap. I just think like if you look at what they deliver, you can get on them about monetization in single player games. You can get on them about moving projects and canceling stuff. I'm personally annoyed they canceled Heartland, right? But if you look at what they actually deliver, like their games are big, they're fully featured, they support them for long periods of time. They were one of the first to get the PlayStation 5 and Series X upgrades out for free, no charge on upgrades. So I mean, I really like a lot of times what Ubisoft does. And they have Star Wars Outlaws and Shadows coming out this year. I mean, both look cool. I'm very excited to see more here in a couple weeks. I got nothing against Ubisoft.
Oh yeah, me neither. I've loved Ubisoft like for a while. Like only 2021 was like their bad year, I would call it, because that was when they were doing a lot of these stupid moves like NFTs, announcing a bunch of free-to-play stuff that then we would walk down like remember those Recon Frontlines? That was like so downvoted that they ended up canceling it for XYZ reasons. Them like responding to the NFT craze is like, oh yeah, people that criticize this don't get it. And so it was like they went through like a phase that I understood why they would be like easily clownable, but they also like from last year's showcase was like they made it clear. It was like, we're gonna reset. We're gonna like reset expectations. We kind of want to try some new stuff. That's how we got the Prince of Persia game. That's one of the best games this year, and we got that. That was like 100%. Yeah. Skull and Bones. I mean, you have someone in your SG panel that absolutely loves it.
He was messaging about it like an hour ago, I swear. Like, oh, let it go, man.
Yeah, it's so crazy with Hug. Like, you never know that the things are gonna hit with him, and it's always kind of like the complete opposite. I thought it was okay. It was just like, I know Travis likes making fun of me that I played most of that game solo, but I'm like, I play most live service games. Like, I don't know if you've seen, like, there's many live service games that allow a lot of solo play to be able to, and then obviously only high level content is what you need to play like with friends for. Kind of like that. I kind of like model it like with Destiny that I play a lot. Obviously, you saw in our chat that I was kind of playing Destiny. You were like asking me for some like time adjustments, but it's like there's a lot of live service games can allow for like solo play, and they can be pretty fun. And to me, I really take umbrage on games that are like, oh yeah, if you play for solo, it's an absolutely terrible experience, or at least that's how it was for me. So that's kind of like why I clowned on it. But obviously, it was fun playing with Travis when we were doing the review back then in February. But it's just been funny how Hulk has just been so like in love with that game. So
yeah, it's definitely funny. He was going on about it, and the guy, we have a couple people from Ubisoft that watch Bigcast and communicate with. In fact, I'm meeting up with one of them in LA next week, which is awesome.
Is it Sean?
Yeah, Sean. Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
so he posted today.
He always likes and shares when he shared my when I reviewed Avatar last year. He was one of the first big sharers. So I was like, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He always likes our reviews, and I'm meeting up with him next week, which is great. And I'll be at UB Forward and stuff, so it should be a good time. Yeah, but it is funny. He messaged on Twitter today saying like, "Yeah, good to hear Hogue talking about Skull and Bones." I'm like, "Oh God, don't get him started."
Yeah, that and I know he also liked Suicide Squad, which also you liked a lot. That was one that I was a little bit more iffy on, and I recently uninstalled it after trying episode 2. I asked Zach. I was like, I was in a chat. I was like, "Hey, do you have any impressions about episode 2?" Because I'm like, I want to see like how it starts. And when it started with like a right text here, like starts. And I was like, wow, really?
Like, come on, guys.
Come on. Like, I am really hoping, because that's the thing. Like, I'm harsher on how hard it stopped, but early on, I really enjoy that game. I like how it looked. I like how it's such a fun game to play. I really that 30-second.
That's the problem.
So fun. And then the content around that loop is like, if you only had more, and the things that they're adding is like because I got to try one new mission that it was like you going through like a parallel, like not even called parallel Earth. It feels like you're getting into like a computer, like virtual reality, and you have to kind of like switch back and forth and like to fight some enemies. I was like, wow, this is like they made a mission time more annoying, at least for me, compared to ones that I really enjoyed. One that you have to kill like 150 like animals like super quick. That's how I leveled up to get the Joker. And I was like, man, the gameplay loop is so fun. Like I love playing with the Joker, but I was like, it's like the mission is like, do I still have to wait for them to like add something that really re-energizes me? So I was like, okay, this is gonna be, it's a short install, it's like 45 gigs. I'm gonna delete it for now and wait for the best when season 2 starts. But it's like when I saw that right text here, I was like, this is unbelievable. I was like, gosh, I really want to like this.
Yeah, that's bad. I think that that's probably one of those games. Like if you think about the arc of this year right now, there's so many. I can't even keep up right now with the games I'm enjoying. Right, we get Shadow of the Erdtree in a couple weeks, and that's obviously going to take over my life. And then in August, remember, we get Star Wars Outlaws, which we were just talking about. So there's a bunch of like big stuff coming. I think the best thing to do, honestly, with Suicide Squad, right? Just give it 6 months. Let them just work, and then that'll be a game. I think I'm hoping that Rocksteady sticks with it, like some of the better live service kind of recoveries we've seen in the industry. And then 6 months, a year from now, when we go back, it'll be a little more refined with some more kind of meaningful content. Because you're right, the gameplay loop, we've talked about this a lot. The gameplay loop itself is fantastic, super fun to play. They just need to make it more meaningful.
Yeah, it's like so good that I even made like the controversial claim that even around the time when Helldivers 2, which is really good, was like exploding. I like the shooting of Suicide Squad better. that was like, to me personally, when I was playing, I was like, man, I really enjoy like how just shooting a gun and like the movement of Suicide Squad feels. But obviously everything in Helldivers 2 was kind of like worked well together, like all encompassing. That I was like, man, it's kind of sad that we have both of these games like next to each other, and this one's getting like all the accolades, deservedly so, and this one that also has a really strong gameplay loop because of everything around it. Just kind of like models the message that I was like, oh man,
it's a shame.
Yeah, I'm just hoping, especially because Suicide Squad being under WB and WB being such a weird publisher right now, where it was like they blamed that game on a 200 million loss. I was like, oh man, this is especially under the David Zaslav era of WB. I'm like, these people that are like so out of touch that I'm like, I fear for them, but I'm hopeful that like we saw with Destiny, it's like, that game was not good at launch, but it had a strong core that carried it by the time they filled that out.
Exactly. So
it's like, I hope they get there. So.
Me too. Yeah, I hope that I hope WV at least lets them kind of utilize that talent, because Rocksteady's super talented, right? Just let them build upon that. They have the foundation. It's there.
Yeah. So another game that I've been playing the Paper Mario, the 1000-Year Door.
Nice.
The remake that came out last Thursday, around the time that I got sick. Ironically, that's when I got I got the Paper Mario around this time where I'm getting like a fever, and the funny thing is that this Paper Mario game also feels like a fever dream because it's so weird. is like one of the weirdest things that Nintendo has done, like with the Mario franchise. It's like that. I put it in our review text, and it was like, man, this is such a fever dream that I'm kind of like surprised they got so many innuendos, like that I'm like, how did Nintendo get this? Like most of this stuff like back in 2004, and how did this pass? And like weird stuff of like slight spoilers. I know that spoilers is kind of like a fun even though it's like something to keep it pretty mild. Is like there's a computer, like a legit computer, that falls in love with Princess Peach, and Bowser suffers high cholesterol, high blood pressure, loves like fried eggs. It's like there's just such stupid. There's just so much like hilarious banter and writing in that game that I'm like, oh man, it's like this is why the GameCube era is like such a favorite of mine from the Nintendo era, from Metroid Prime, Wind Waker, and all that, because it's like Nintendo and their back foot being so inventive in a way that I feel like when I compare it to like the Paper Mario game that came out during the pandemic, that was like so sanded off and so like simple in comparison. I was like, man, it's like, yeah, this is not bad, but it's like it's just missing an edge. Yes, obviously it's paper, so it's missing the edge. The paper.
Yeah, I played the new one, the Switch one, like you said, and like I was really excited about it, and it didn't grab me at all. I was like, this doesn't feel like what I was hoping for out of this game. So yeah, I need to pick up the remake. I'm excited to get into it.
Yes, so. That's a fun one to play like in handheld mode at least. It's like that the paper art style like works really well on like on a handheld Switch. I really love the combat system that takes it to like a theater, and and it's just funny like how different things like work together to make that such a rewarding RPG. Like in the combat, obviously it has like the turn-based but also real-time element of like when you want to attack with someone, you have to like time the jump button. I know that was like in Super Mario RPG also. I really love that you interact with, because if the battles happen like a theater stage play, you have like audience members that are looking at you. And you earn like your star powers for like super strong attacks just by like cheering them on, and then you can like use your own characters, kind of like a wink at the audience for them to be like to swoon. I saw like a streamer call it like the simp power, kind of like to the simp, and then he just fills it up. But it's just like it's such a funny game that is like it's so charming that I'm hearing that apparently selling really well over in the UK. I'm like, please, I hope that Nintendo. Okay. Yeah, I'm hoping that Nintendo sees that the tone that they had with this Paper Mario is like it's the right tone for Paper Mario, because like it's just so unique. It has such unique character designs that I'm like, wow, it's like they really like went so creative. It's like usually when we think of Mario, we know of Goombas, we know of the piranha plants, we know what the Mario aesthetic is, and Paper Mario was them like letting themselves go wild with different designs that you usually don't see in Mario. And it's wild that they haven't recaptured that in almost 20 years, because that was in 2004. So,
yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah, the GameCube area is special for me too. That and I mean all those early eras, excuse me. But yeah, GameCube was a funny one for me because I was super excited about it. I pre-ordered it and 6 games. Because remember, by that time I'm in my early 20s. Yeah. And then the Xbox came out and Halo took over my entire world forever. I mean, that just took over. But I always appreciated the GameCube, and of course the PS2 was in its stride at that point too. It's just if you think back to that time, what a crazy era that we were spoiled with, between Xbox, the original Xbox coming in and kind of, it wasn't the gigantic seller, but it disrupted enough and had some really fantastic games and technology, especially with Xbox Live kind of taking off. Yeah, and then GameCube was very unique, had some fantastic Nintendo versions of their IPs. You know what I mean? The Sunshines of the world. It had what do you call it? Double Dash, Metroid Prime.
Dash,
great games. And then obviously the PS2 is a legend. And it's just what a great time for games, man. Yeah, and that's without even mentioning the Dreamcast.
Oh yes, early on before they had to go to an early grave. But the Xbox was basically kind of like the follow-up of the Dreamcast. A lot of those ideas of Dreamcast got fulfilled, like online play and all that.
Exactly.
So a lot of people always like combine Xbox with Dreamcast. It's kind of like that. Like Lord Cognito from the Iron Lords podcast, like jokes. It's like Xbox was like the refugee camp for everyone that was like in the Sega camp.
100%.
And when that left. And what I love most about that generation was how creative it was. Like it really felt like you could get every kind of game there in from all like the 3 console manufacturers, and even with the Xbox that didn't quite sell as much, obviously as a new entry, the exclusive library that thing had. That I know Eric even he made like that list. That he like linked to me. It was like, they were really like they were going hard, being like, we're a new entry and let us show you like what we can try to do. And such great memories of all those 3 consoles around that time. And Paper Mario is making me really nostalgic about kind of that era. This is one that I committed to like a review if I finish it. Let's see like if I can get it on time. I've been like hoping that my graphics card arrives because it has to come all the way from Florida here so I can like capture some footage and start doing that because I was kind of like sad that I couldn't capture the video quite right for both the Skull and Bones and Rebirth review. Especially how long it took me to the Rebirth, almost like 3 weeks. How long that game was. Yeah. So but I definitely want to do more like video, just because now I'm starting to feel the pressure when I see like Eric is like, putting video now here, and Ray here's like they're showing us Withering Rooms video review here. Did one that came out recently. I'm like, oh man, like I need to be competitive there. The competitive.
Ray's been awesome. What a fantastic addition. He's super nice and he's super, fast and kind of efficient with the video editing. So it's been awesome.
Oh yes, and can't wait for him to help me with whenever I get him like the footage. So
he's like,
you gave us the you bought the more storage space for us to like put the footage in like in the Google Drive. So
yeah. It's for everyone to use. Yeah, we have 6 terabytes now, so we have we have enough space.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes. So that's pretty much all that I've been playing, other than like Destiny. That I'm kind of getting ready for the final shape next week. Obviously, not reviewing it this time, but I'm gonna like update our like rankings of the expansions that I wrote like right before Lightfall. Now I'm gonna write the one for heading to the final shape.
Okay.
So that'll be interesting. We were making the joke that it's funny that over at SG we're gonna have like 3 different Destiny reviewers like do every expansion. Eric did HP, I did Lightfall, and now Steve's gonna do is gonna do the final shape. Maybe I'll get them in the show so we can all like sound off on the
you guys should do that. No doubt. I mean that's gonna be I think a popular thing to talk about 10 years of Destiny, right? Or 11 technically of what that arc looks like. Yeah,
nuts. It's wild to think that do you remember when they were making that promise? It's gonna be a 10-year journey, and I was like, right.
Everyone's like, whatever. Not gonna be
especially after that first year, be like, this is gonna take you like 10 years. Good luck.
I still remember. I have good fond memories because my stepson at the time was 15, and we were big Halo players. Well, obviously you know that about me, but he was too. And Bungie's new game, right? And we got into the beta, both of us, and we played it together. And we must have, the beta was pretty small, but we must have put like 40 hours in a weekend into it together, just finding every secret. And man, it was just very memorable.
That beta was a moment that summer. I remember everyone was like, when that beta happened, was like, man, this is definitely gonna be like the next big thing. Bungie's gonna do it again. Hopefully, there's still more than what we're showing. And then when you play the full game, it's like, oh wow, the beta was like half the game.
And then the ending was so flat on that first game. Like I was like, really, this is it. Like, oof. But
if you had him in for that raid, like the narrative with Destiny would have completely, because everyone always said it is like everyone that just stopped at the campaign, like one would think in normal terms, be like, what even was this? The PvP wasn't that great either. It was, I felt very unbalanced. So it was like, this definitely feels like a miss. I don't know how they're gonna tick. And then I remember that was like, I always credit Destiny for giving me the online experience that I never got like when I was young, because I told that story when my 360 red ranked here in El Salvador, and everyone there from my friends switched to PS3, the single player console that then I love playing FIFA. So it was like, oh man, it was like none of my close friends they all had Xboxes that also red ring, and they were like, never again. So we're going back to PlayStation, and such a miserable time of like me always hearing kind of like that Squidward meme of him like being at a window looking at her of like, oh yeah, over an Xbox you're having like those parties to play Gears of War, to play the Halo. Obviously Reach then eventually came out after 3. Like Call of Duty, that was like the console to play, even though you could play online on PS3, but it wasn't the same. It was like I missed that. And then like Destiny came out at that point where everyone around in my college was also playing it. So when I then found those people and I was like, let's all try to do this raid. Let's see what. And then when that happened, I was like, oh my god, this was transformative. It was like, had it not been for a raid, I wouldn't have stuck with that up and down franchise for 9 to 10 years now. So, Yeah, the best and worst game of the generation. However, a lot of people like joking about Destiny, but enough of what we've been playing. There's just a few couple quick headlines I want to read, so it's time for the news. So, obviously, this has been a topic of conversation for many people. I think you guys talked about it on Bitcast because it was like the Wall Street Journal had like reported. I think it was the Wall Street Journal said that it was actually happening. That it's a final official Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Everyone forget that Black Ops Cold War is actually Black Ops 5. If everyone is confused, it's actually gonna be a launch day one on Game Pass with the announcement made ahead of the June 9th showcase reveal that's happening right after the Xbox showcase. So after all the hand-wringing, after all the cataclysmic news that has been the Xbox side of things this year, where everyone was like, man, so Call of Duty is not even going to be like on Game Pass. So like, why was even the point of purchasing? That was not the point. And now it's finally here. And do you get to see the trailer? The minute and 15 trailer that
don't do much for me, but
I was like, oh cool, there's Bill Clinton, there's Margaret Thatcher, there's Saddam Hussein. I can't wait to see like how if it's true that apparently they're gonna do like 9/11 also. I can't wait to see them
because some have said Desert Storm, which for the US is early 90s. But then we've also seen leaks saying it's 9/11, and I'm like, well, those are two different. That's a decade apart. So are they doing both? What are they doing? So we'll see.
I know Black Ops 2 did 1980s and 2025, kind of like a back and forth. Maybe that's kind of like how they're gonna approach it, as they're gonna have maybe missions over in the Gulf War in the 1990s, and then maybe like we're gonna see like the early 2000s like effect of that, because I know that people always correlate the Gulf War as kind of like a light fuse that eventually led to 9/11.
It's going to be interesting. We, on Bitcast, we were talking about like, given the controversy that seems to arise nowadays versus even a decade ago when a game does something more controversial, it seems to be spread more widely now, with social media. How far are they willing to go? Because, there's, especially here in the US, those conversations can get heated very quick about the validity of those wars, the money spent, the lives lost, were we tricked? There's all those questions that get asked, excuse me. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach it.
Yeah, and we know how the people reacted to 6 days to Fallujah.
Yeah, exactly. And we have I don't want to get into politics here, but we have the nasty habit of kind of negatively displaying Arab culture, in a lot of Western media, and it just becomes like, it's a tough topic that a lot of people aren't deeply educated on, and that makes it controversial, and that's tough. So I wouldn't want to be the one putting that out there.
Yeah, I'm just thankful that no one's trying to touch anything regarding the whole Israel-Palestine thing that's happening right now, because that's like a singularity event waiting to happen if someone even remotely decides to touch on that. And I can't wait to see them like how quote unquote badly they handle it, because I know I don't know if you remember the 2019 Modern Warfare, that game really had like the highway of death thing, that they were like attributing it to the Russians when in real life was kind of like a US thing, and that everyone was like, what is this? Like, how are you like mismanaging like this kind of historical event to like put it on another side, even though it's like a fictional side? And I was like, so I remembered how tiring those conversations can be, and I can't imagine that's gonna be the case also with Black Ops 6. To me, I'm just excited that I don't have to buy it. That's
I've got one of my good friends, Bert, who I started Season Gaming with years ago. So I still talk to him in real life every day, basically. He and his group of friends in real life, like he's got that group of friends who only play Call of Duty. That's the only game they play. They're not gamers, you know what I mean? They play Call of Duty. And so he always invites me to play with him, but I'm just not a Call of Duty guy. I'm not big. I like Warzone for what it is, but I get bored of it pretty quickly. But I'm like, I told him, I was like, hey, maybe I'll play it for at least a little bit for you this year, because I don't have to pay for it outright. You know what I mean? I already have Game Pass. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, I hope it's good. I think, as we joke at SG a lot, it's going to be interesting knowing that this is the first Call of Duty releasing as an Xbox product and on Game Pass. And it's going to be interesting to see all the not interesting. I think it's going to be just pull up your popcorn and watch the ridiculousness that we see on social media. You know,
if for some reason this review is low, everyone's gonna do hashtag Xbox tax again, and I'll be like,
yes.
And if that happens, I'm like, hey, just look what happened at Modern Warfare 3 last year, and look at those reviews. It's like, I'm not surprised if the quality is kind of like trending that way. And I was the one that reviewed Modern Warfare 3. That was the last time when I was like, I'm not buying this for full price again. That's why I was like, I became like a more, please make it for Game Pass so I don't have to buy any more of these games, especially how gypped I felt with Modern Warfare 3. So
it feels like they screwed up. Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't wait for this to see how they do the multiplayer, like what they change or like what kind of multiplayer they follow, because it's Treyarch, and how they do zombies, because like my brother, he's one of those Easter egg hunter like zombie players. That is like they know how to do like all the secrets. They spend like with all their friends. They're like, okay, now this time you're gonna throw a grenade over here to wait for like a specific dog that's gonna give you like this item. Where we're gonna go all the way here to do like a wall run. They're gonna shoot like this bow that you're gonna be given to form some skeletons. It's gonna give you an extra bow. They're gonna shoot to this other thing. It's like, I'm like, how do people figure out this stuff?
No kidding.
It's like the game doesn't even like. Does Treyarch like send like tips to some players so they can start doing the videos or people can look, because it doesn't make any sense how people find those Easter eggs, but some people are nuts with that, and I can't wait to see how he takes that, because he loves Call of Duty. My brother was like, unlike me, he is a competitive player. He would be one that would play on those Modern Warfare Warzone tournaments. He built his PC on earnings of playing those tournaments.
Oh, nice, good for him.
He's one of those like super like talented PvP players. I'm like, we couldn't be any more different, you and I. And the single player guy that will platinum a game. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting, because if we dive into the details, right? And I think it was 2021 maybe, where like they had a plan, they have the 3 studios and they release every 3 years. Yeah. And they had a plan to release the one game, and for whatever reason they didn't feel it was ready, so they shuffled everything. And that seemed to really have a negative impact overall on Cold War, Modern Warfare 3, in the past couple years, right, where like the campaign weren't great, they launched buggy. So supposedly what we're hearing, right, is that this one is the one that Treyarch themselves have been working on for the full development period, right, for the 4 years. So we shall see. Hopefully it launches better than Modern Warfare 3 and Cold War, because both of those had some pretty big issues at launch.
Yeah, and what's funny with Treyarch is that since 2015 with Black Ops 3 was the last time they launched a full game that they had like full development with like no trouble, because 2018 was where their campaign didn't come together, and that's why they had to pivot for the Blackout Battle Royale, because that was when that was when PUBG was like, and Fortnite was like so big, and they're like, no, we kind of have to do that. And what we're doing with the campaign, where they were saying that it was going to be like a multiplayer campaign 2v2 thing, that like kind of like a Titanfall model of like that they were going to be playing matches, and whoever wins from the 2 sides of matches were going to be they determine how the story was going to go. I remember reading those things, but it didn't come together for them, so they had to like just pivot and do the multiplayer zombies and Blackout. And then like their planned multiple years of content they had of Black Ops 4 had to be cut short because of what happened. What you mentioned, the studio that was supposed to go out in 2020, which was Sledgehammer, messed up. They messed up, and then that's when they had to like reshift things, and they had to bring in Treyarch just to do the multiplayer of that game, and then Raven Software did the campaign for Black Ops Cold War. And then obviously poor Sledgehammer then had to build up a quick game in Vanguard in 2021, like in a super short period. It's like it's been rough for them. Like it's been really rough in that depth.
Yeah, that's when Angela reviewed. So Angela, who used to do stuff for us at SG, she reviewed Cold War, and she couldn't finish it. Like she couldn't finish the campaign. It broke on her, and she couldn't finish it. She's like, what do I do with this? I'm like, write it, and write what happened. Like that's what you do.
Yeah, especially that one's rough, because you have to do like a bunch of investigation and puzzle solving to like get to like the end of that story. There's like had interesting ideas, but it's like the wheels were coming off of Call of Duty basically. Is like that analyzation was just not it was just not tenable. And even Modern Warfare 2, which technically had the 3-year dev cycle from like 2019 to 2022, that one also launched incomplete. Like some basic features had to be like patched in. People were not fans of the slowing of the movement of that game because a lot of people have become so accustomed to like the speed of the 2019 game that they found with the Warzone mode Then it was like, oh yeah, they slow the game down. Like you cannot like do slide cancel and all that. People like went up in arms, but then immediately we're like, oh yeah, the DLC we're playing now, it's got a full game. We're gonna basically fix all that. That was Modern Warfare 3, and that was like the most cynical cash grab of them all. I was appalled with Modern Warfare 3. So, yeah, 5 out of 10. Yeah. That's what I gave.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's obviously big news on Game Pass. I think it's the right move. I think you've heard me say like Xbox has to be, Game Pass has been their product, right? It's their thing especially in the console space, but in the gaming space overall. And if they're going to be all in, you got to be all in. You can't kind of just put your toe in the water. You know what I mean? So this is all in. So, I mean, you've got Black Ops 6. You should have, we'll find out next week. You should have Indiana Jones. You should have Avowed. You should have a couple other things probably coming later this year and into early next year that, are pretty big releases. So hopefully we'll see what it does. I'm just excited. I think it's a good time. As you said, we get State of Play tomorrow. So we're starting to get to that time of the year where it picks up from the major publishers and we start to see what we're going to be playing in the next year.
Our gaming Super Bowl is finally returning. It's finally feeling like old times, even if it's not under the name E3.
Yeah.
But,
exactly.
Before we talk about that State of Play, today, ironically, when we were recording, that's when Sony was going to do their games and services financial. The financial talk where they were going to talk about how the last year went for them and what kind of like was the outlook of the future. And some of like the key things that I kind of went through like the 38 slide presentation. I actually put the link in our whatchamacallit, in our Discord main chat, but I can send it to you if you want to. You just kind of see it there. You just got so you could kind of like skim through like some of the things that they were kind of mentioning, and I was kind of listening to the Herman Holtz Q&A that they were mentioning. So I think I remember you were saying that you were waiting to hear like what their plans were gonna be like going forward with like depending on how like some scuttlebutt we had heard about how their financials have been going with the Insomniac leak, where we're hearing about like the razor thin margins and all of that. So the things that they mentioned, they didn't mention the margins, but they mentioned how the PS5 generation so far has been like their most profitable to date, and like especially when compared to where the PS4 generation was like total after like it's 7 years. That was kind of like in the third slide there, where they were like it made like 10.7 billion totals in profit, and now they're like at 10.6 at 4 years with the at 4 years into the generation. They reiterated that they're having a lot of based on like the MAUs of like who is playing or who. Apparently, there's like an equal split of PS5 players and PS4 players. Those spending on the PS5 side, it's bigger. So more people are spending like more money there right now. They reiterated kind of like their strategy of like how they're like dividing their studios. Though I did find interesting how last year's meeting they had emphasized how like a lot of the quota of like what they were gonna release was gonna be like 40% single player and 60% live service. They didn't say those kind of percentages this time, and they did like in the 22nd slide. They highlight they basically lined up where how they're like separating their studios. Like for example, obviously you have your single player narrative focused games, which includes Team Asobi, Insomniac, Santa Monica, Sucker Punch, Naughty Dog, Fire Sprite, and Housemarque, and including Bluepoint, Nixxes, and I think Valkyrie was the one that's kind of like the partner studios that are going to help with single player. And then they did like the other half where they have like the evolving multi-genre studios where they include Guerrilla, Polyphony, Media Molecule, and and Bend as kind of like, oh yeah, they're either gonna work on a multiplayer game or like a single player game. They're gonna be like they get a chance to experiment. And then obviously they separated the live service studios, which include San Diego, Bungie, Firewalk Haven, and Neon Koi, which I think is their mobile one, if I remember correctly. So, what I find fun is that we know what those games are from like the live services, were the ones from the last showcase, which were Fair Games, Concord, Marathon, obviously Destiny, and MLB. Which kind of like when remember the Jim Ryan under Jim Ryan, they were saying like we're gonna go more into live services. Now they're basically saying like the ones that are already out there are all there is. So we're keeping them there, but let's just reemphasize kind of like what we do over here. So I think we can kind of start already see the shift before Herman Hulse kind of like takes over. They mentioned how Hulk's favorite game of 2023, Spider-Man 2, sold 11 million units, but Helldivers 2 in less time has sold 12 million. Obviously, as a PS5 and PC.
Yeah, and Helldivers 2 has ongoing engagement, right? Whereas Spider-Man 2 won't. So.
It's just like a straight up single player game. But then even with this data, they kind of reiterated what Herman Hulse had mentioned back in 2022, where they said that their live service games were going to be PS5 and PC launches, so like simultaneous. But single player is still going to be like still just start on console, and then a PC version will come like down the line. And the only exception for no PC launch and live service is MLB The Show, which in their 29th slide is like they put it like as a fine print at the bottom. I was like, oh yeah, live service MLB is the only one that's not on PC, but hey, that's on Xbox, so that kind of counts. So
the funny thing about just a weird note about that is I was realizing is, as you know, a lot of players are going to PC as their kind of multi-platform place to play now. The interesting thing that only just occurred to me yet again the other day as you said that about MLB is none of the sports games are on PC.
Which is wild.
Yeah, it's like you can't play FIFA, you can't play NHL, you can't play Madden, which is crazy because many years ago those games were on PC. And then at one point they just stopped. Like EA stopped doing that. And 2K too. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, the couple things that jumped out to me about these slides, I've got them kind of up here. I'm kind of looking through some of the analysts I follow, and I'll probably do a write-up on these as I usually do. But so a lot of I won't say a lot. There's been some commentary around just PlayStation from a first-party perspective, not really releasing any games. We talked about that, right? Like they're just pretty dry. But a couple things are clear. As you said, the revenue continues to drive upwards. A lot of that is around the PC drive forward, which they're becoming more efficient with their ports, as well as live service. Some of their games like MLB, like Helldivers, etc. So the profitability is really, the revenue generation is really strong. The interesting thing, which I keep pointing out, I talked about this with 2K's results a week or two ago on Bigcast, because I've talked to Dan about this, because Dan is like hardcore single player guy.
Oh yes.
And I was like, whether you like it or not, dude, like, the majority of the revenue for these companies is not game sales anymore. It's services, it's in-game content, it's expansions, it's add-ons, it's subs, it's all these other things. And PlayStation points that out pretty clearly, right? Like full game sales, like actual buying Spider-Man 2, for instance, that only accounts for 27% of their revenue.
Yeah, that's everything is extra spending on the ongoing
so
stuff.
3/4 of the revenue is consoles, add-on content, DLCs, PlayStation Plus sub tiers, and accessories, right? And it's just really interesting. So to your point, I think what I'm gathering, and I think you were kind of alluding to this from this presentation today, is that we heard previously that originally we heard they had 12 live service games in development. Then like a few months back, we heard they were pulling a couple of those, narrowing it a little bit, right? And to your point, I think what it looks like, right, is they have those kind of standardized ones, the MLB The Shows, the Destinies, etc. Obviously, we know that Marathon's coming. We know that what's the one I'm forgetting about?
Concord and Fur Games.
Thank you. Coming, but I think they're pretty clear. Like they want to have more ongoing focus, because we talked about this at the start. Trying to develop 12 live service games is a monumental task. I don't care how big you are. So why would you not narrow that down to a few of your ones that are already doing well, have a few new additions, and hopefully kind of curate those and put the development power to those, while over here you still spend the time to make your big first single player IPs and stuff like Ghost of Tsushima 2, which we all pretty much assume is in development, of Wolverine. So I think PlayStation always figures it out. It's kind of funny because in the social media community, especially if you follow some of the more Xbox leaning guys, they talk about all kinds of different things, profitability, or Sony hasn't released a game, or all these different things. And it's like, if you wade through all the noise, PlayStation is just excellent at running the business of PlayStation. And I think that people, especially in the US here, because Xbox has always been very American, right? And so here, I think a lot of people, even though PlayStation is gigantic here like everywhere else, I think there's still a lot of people that don't really understand globally how big the PlayStation brand is compared to not only Xbox, but just anything. Like PlayStation as a brand has like gigantic brand power.
Significant momentum.
Yeah, and it's just like, even when they make mistakes, they're able to kind of correct, and it doesn't really hurt them long term. PS3 was probably the biggest mistakes we've seen them make, and by the end of that generation, they were right back to kicking ass, going into PS4 era where they dominated. So it's just, they're very good at kind of correcting in that space. So this was interesting today. I don't think there was anything, there was nothing that jumped out to me as surprising. But it's pretty impressive to see just how strong they continue to be.
Yeah, it's more like it's kind of like I always said, like this generation of PlayStation, the most frustrating thing has been their absolute like silence in most times. So there's a lot that can be construed from the silence compared to how much the other side talks. Where we've also argued that they talk way too much. That like to bite them. So there's at least it's more. Kind of like perspective, or kind of like where PlayStation is, which is like even when they missed their 25 million sales target that they were trying to get, which was like an insane number that they were kind of like figuring out based on how the trends were going, is still like they're still earning a lot of market, like they're still like have quite the market power, like how much like their console is so proliferated that even with Microsoft that now is earning a lot of profit thanks to ABK, it's like their market penetration is obviously a little weaker because like they're not as like out there as PlayStation is like pretty much everywhere. I have kind of my example here in El Salvador where Xbox is so minute. And like in the stores that I go, like you don't see any disc game from them. Like sometimes you see a Series S or a Series X kind of like being sold at a Radio Shack. We still have Radio Shacks here for some reason, but it's like they're selling for cheaper. And the PlayStation, they're selling it for more expensive, and those are still moving. And the Xbox is like it's so wild how strong that brand here is, and Nintendo also, where I see a bunch of like Nintendo just keeps like moving. That their brand power like worldwide is like really really strong. That then when you kind of like mentioned in America, Xbox is doing good. Like in America, it's very easy. It's easier for you if you're like in the US or maybe Canada or even Mexico, to have a rosier picture of like how Xbox is doing kind of like locally, and globally it's still like a place where they need to like figure something out. That's why I keep saying that I hope they do that handheld. I feel that handheld like in a place like in Japan, that could be like really good for them if they do it. So at least now we have like some idea of like how PlayStation is like not much of a change of strategy. Though I did find funny, this was in the Q&A that is not quite here. There was like a question put into Herman Holst about the cost of games, based on kind of like, because they obviously we have talked about kind of like they have they have a lot of revenue coming in, but the cost is kind of getting out of control, like what happened with Spider-Man 2. And he mentioned something about they're trying to look into outsourcing development more outside of California, because apparently a lot of that cost is being driven up because of how expensive the state of California, where a lot of their first-party studios are. To kind of like ameliorate that. And I remember Herman had already mentioned that they needed to kind of keep those budgets in check, because it was like when you look at Spider-Man 2 and you think of that as a $300 million game, you're like, what's happening here?
That makes no sense.
It makes no sense for that to be so expensive. So
no, I mean that's I work in application development, so I work with resources and offshore resource, what we call offshore, right? So in various different countries, and I mean it's kind of weird, really, because it's really standardized in any kind of app development. If you look at any of the big companies, even Microsoft, Sony, Apple, Google, right? They're just offshore development is it's the bulk of development that goes on, and that I would still always, I'm not saying this to the contrary, I would always advocate to make sure you're paying fair wages, market value for those people. But it goes without saying, the cost of living in some of the places development occurs versus say San Francisco, which is obscene, is it's not even a comparison. So like you look at God of War, right? Sony Santa Monica. Santa Monica is one of the most expensive places to live in the US, which is one of the most expensive places in the world. It's like, why do you have all your development staff there? That makes no sense. So I think I don't know why some of the big publishers have done that traditionally. I don't know if it's just because it was born of a time where gaming industry was a much smaller industry and it wasn't as kind of prevalent as it is now or global. And it's like, dude, there's so many resources, especially in your major blooming industries in India and China and South Korea. Like I've been talking about that for. Oh, do they?
Yeah, they call it out as kind of like some growth opportunities in the whatchamacallit, in the expanded lineup. I think it's in number 19 or somewhere. Like
I haven't gone through the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like a lot. It's in the 34, slide 34 in the Sony Group PlayStation like expansion. It's like they want to like expand like with other partners in China and India. They mention it.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, like it's something I've been kind of talking about is like those are huge upcoming markets. Like China is already one of the biggest markets for game spend. That's why you see like even though like PUBG may not be super big here, it's still one of the biggest games in the world because of the spend that occurs elsewhere. And it's like the development talent that is untapped in those markets is unbelievable. So I fully expect that in the next decade, you're going to see all the major publishers really expand into those regions and not only expand with the focus of their games, but expand in the sense of utilizing that development because it's a no-brainer. You know, they have to combat the cost of AAA game development. It's out of control.
Yeah, especially right now with inflation. I think inflation is the thing that is like really eating at everyone. So they have to try to find ways.
It compounds it for sure. Yeah. So,
yeah, interesting times with Sony. And now that they have talked about their financials, they're finally ready to talk again.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. And I'm one of those, you know, I'm one of the 8 PSVR 2 supporters. So, you know, I really like my PSVR 2 and I'm hoping to see some stuff. So they said, 14 games tomorrow?
Yeah, 14 games total.
As we record this.
Yeah, they didn't quite say like what the balance is going to be between like just PS5 only games and PSVR, but they're like lumped together. So maybe 3 games, maybe 4.
Yeah, maybe 2 to 4 is what I'd guess. I'd say 4 is high, but I mean, I'd like it. But yeah, I'm curious to see what we get here and when things are releasing. I think, as we've said, there's already so many big releases coming later this year. If Sony or PlayStation adds 1, 2, 3 to that list, it's going to be a monstrous year. And I don't care. You know, a lot of stuff has been made about, well, Sony hasn't released a first party game. I'm like, yeah, but they're good at curating. Like you look at Stellar Blade, you look at Helldivers, like they're still releasing games through their partnerships, which is what matters, right?
That's what I find so like interesting of thinking of PlayStation this year, because just things that are only on PS5, if we remove The Last of Us Part 2 Remaster, let's say, which was like the first thing, like Grand Blue Fantasy Relink was just for them. Helldivers 2 was also just for them. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was also
Rebirth.
Them. Yeah, Rise of the Ronin them. Stellar Blade
16.
Is like
Final Fantasy 16 was last year, but
the 16 DLC was also like this year. Pacific 5 was also like their only. So it's like if you look at their ecosystem, it's like they're giving their fan base like exclusives, even if it's not like headline first party. Even though 3 of them were like published by Sony, that I'm like, I think it's like that just goes to show that a healthy ecosystem can like rely not just on first party, but also strategically have your second parties and third parties. And I'm like, Xbox has all these first parties, but they shouldn't feel shameful of like getting maybe like a second party going just to try to like fill up their lineup. Kind of like that they announced today that the Rocksteady founders,
Rocksteady guys,
that Xbox is apparently gonna fund their game. That's not a first party. I'm like, do that. Definitely,
absolutely.
That absolutely will help you like fill up a calendar while your first party still cooks. So that's basically been PlayStation. If it was just first party for them, they would be like in a bigger trouble. If we were like really like if we were honest about how like things went for them, but it's like they really got carried because they went so first party heavy early, and now it's like they're probably gonna be backhanded for like the rest of the, but they have like a strategic middle section. So Astro, do you see it's kind of? Do you think? It's gonna be,
I am pumped, man. I am pumped. I love, I'm a 3D platformer stan, and I love Sackboy. I loved Astrobot. Obviously, I joke about Banjo coming back all the time. But a fully featured Astrobot, not just kind of like the tech demo, even though it's a fantastic game. But, like an even bigger one than we got with the PS5 launch, I'm all about, dude. I can't wait. Super excited.
Oh, yes. And Astro's Playroom was such a phenomenal game.
So good. So good.
It's such a surprising game because I thought it was just going to be like a 1 hour, like, let me show you the controller. But no, it was like a really well-featured 4 or 5 hour, like, tech demo that was like more creative than most 3D platforming games.
It really was. So if they extrapolate that out to a 15 or 20 hour experience, like with more kind of biomes and enemies and all that stuff, like, oh god, I'll be all over it.
I do find it funny that if you go to like back to the Sony like presentation and the slide 25, Astro is there. So like Astro is like listed in the games of world-class franchises. I'm like, sneaky way of saying, but I think that's pretty much confirmed that it's actually coming back if you're putting Astrobot as a world-class franchise. And it's Uncharted, Until Dawn, Marathon, Fur Games, Concord. So I'm to me, what I always find interesting about State of Play is that I was kind of like having I don't know if you notice how often me and Eric go back and forth in our chats in like Paragraph, like in the main SG chat, that I feel like so I have made the argument that it's always interesting how Sony has created kind of like a branding bind when it comes to when they speak, that every time that they announce a State of Play, what do people do? Roll their eyes all the time. Because everyone was like, where is the showcase? Because of what they did in 2020 when they announced the PS5 with the big console. It was like, oh, this is not a State of Play, no, this is a showcase. So everyone was like, oh, okay, so then this is going to always be the big ones, and then State of Plays are always going to be like throwaway ones. And then last year's showcase was a big disappointment for many people, and the last 2 State of Plays were better than the showcase. So that's what I find interesting, because they changed the presentation of the State of Play starting with September, where they finally had people speaking. Like when they added this new lady called Shawnee Benson, she has become like kind of like the new MC when they do like the State of Play, because remember, it was just that disembodied voice back in the day where I was like, oh yeah, it's not personal. It's like, let us show you about the new titles coming to PS5. So it was like, it's like you felt that distance. And now with like someone like Shawnee, we're like, okay, this at least like makes it feel more like, okay, it's actual people trying to show us games. And the State of Play from this January, that was like 40 minutes long, the one that had the 2-hour Kojima trailer for Death Stranding 2 at the end. I know.
Don't get me started. I know people love it. I know. It's just not me.
But kind of like they had that there, and announcing the other Kojima game afterwards, and Herman Holtz
movie project.
So so
it makes sense. Sorry,
Alex. Kind of like what I see is like, I think it would be better for them to just eliminate the showcase, like maybe just not do them anymore, and instead, kind of like Nintendo, that every time they do a Nintendo Direct, it's a Nintendo Direct. Every time that PlayStation is like, oh yeah, it's time for a State of Play, everyone was like, okay, it's like a big thing. Let's, instead of being like, oh, okay, this is not gonna be a big thing, because obviously it's only gonna be a big thing if it has the showcase name. So it is a weird branding thing. I think that if they're not going to do the kind of E3 style showcase like Xbox still does, right, where they actually call it their game showcase, and then Xbox has the developer direct, which I've really liked the past few they've done. I thought those are really good. And I agree with you. There's nothing wrong at all with just doing State of Plays, but just come out and say, look, we want to be more communicative. We're, twice a year when we feel it's most beneficial, we're going to do a State of Play. Just tell, again, it's what we talked about. Just tell us. And I don't think it, I think really the only people that care are us, right? We're the only ones, the people who live and breathe this stuff every day. So I think they look at it as it's not going to make any difference in their bottom line. That's why they don't care. Oh, yeah. But, for us, we would like that clarity of like, are we ever going to get that E3 style showcase from PlayStation again, or are those days gone and now we're just doing this? I just like to know, And this was what I found funny, because like in 2022, when they didn't have a showcase, they had 3 State of Plays. Last year, they had a showcase and 2 State of Plays. So it's like, even though they don't communicate, they always like talk at least 3 times a year, but because they're so silent, it always feels like, if you think of the base, like the more fanboy like base of the PlayStation side, they always feel like they're in calamity, because everyone is like, when is it? It's like, when are you speaking? And I'm like, what's funny is that they have been kind of like consistent of when they speak, but because of their entire demeanor of being so quiet, it feels like they don't.
It's because there's nothing in between. It's just like 4 or 5, 6 months with nothing. And then all of a sudden, like today, it's like, State of Play tomorrow. It's like, what? Like, where have you been?
Exactly. So I'm like, if it's like a pattern at the release, like I feel the base would just feel like, at least with Xbox, is like you have the confidence that that first or second Sunday, it's all like to expect them there. Like, at least they have created that. And even with the developer direct, which obviously that was born over the fact that they had so much now that they own that they need more stuff. Like they need another venue to talk, because Xbox was only once a year we would hear from them now. Even when before we would hear them at Gamescom back in the day, at least we were like, at least we can hear them twice. One in like June and one in like August, and then that kind of went away. So I just find it interesting how like the way the three big console brands talk to us is like how everything is perceived. And then I just think about Nintendo, that I'm like, they did a good job of building the Nintendo Direct brand, that every time it happens, it feels like something that everyone has to watch, even when a lot of those Nintendo Directs don't have anything. It's still it's like people are not like, oh well, another one, let's see. So,
and Nintendo, I mean, it's always hard to, I find it hard to talk about Nintendo sometimes, because like, I mean, whether or not that they're really for me, I play them a lot less than I used to, my Switch and stuff, but they are just unstoppable. Like it literally, like they just sell and sell and sell and sell, and they have that hardcore, dedicated, massive global fan base that is just, they're there for Nintendo. And I think that the Switch obviously crushed it, right? It was the right idea for the right time, and them continuing, we'll learn early next year, right? The Super Switch or Switch 2, whatever the hell it's going to be, but they're just going to continue that. I mean, they're going to go flying off the shelf. So Nintendo's always kind of an anomaly to me, but seeing their reports and their sales is crazy. But anyway,
it's just so wild. It's so wild.
So yeah, I'm excited about State of Play tomorrow. I think that kind of kicks us off, gets us ready for next week, where we get Summer Game Fest, Xbox, and Ubisoft. And yeah, man, it's gonna be a great couple weeks. I'm pumped.
Yeah. And what's funny is that tomorrow is not even just the State of Play. Following the State of Play, there's also a Silent Hill transmission. Like immediately the hour after. So obviously, like Konami, like they love doing their random transmissions where they're gonna tell us about like what plans they have for Silent Hill. So they're gonna talk about maybe the movie, or they're gonna talk about more, maybe give a date to the Silent Hill 2 remake that people got to see a little bit more of at the State of Play from January, or maybe another Silent Hill game, who knows. But it's like they're finally gonna talk. Now we know what game is not gonna be at the State of Play if they're doing like a transmission the same day. That I did find interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
And because of when we're recording and when this is gonna post, right here is where I'm gonna cut as a reaction after I see all of this, so you can hear my immediate reactions not until a week later. So, and like I mentioned, here is the pickup, as I have now seen the State of Play that was recently announced and ran for 30 minutes, or around 35 minutes and 32 seconds according to Warrior64, that featured the 14 titles, the updates on PS5 and PSVR 2 titles, and a look at some PlayStation Studios games that were arriving later in 2024. So before I read what were those announcements, overall my thoughts of this State of Play are like, it was solid, maybe like okay-ish. It definitely was like a step down if you compare it to like the State of Play that we received back in January, because that one was like 45 minutes long. It was actually really densely packed. It had a lot of information that was pertinent of what was needed for like the first half of PlayStation, and like some of the published things that Sony was gonna have out in that time frame, from like Stellar Blade. That's when it got its release date. That's how we got like an extended look at Death Stranding 2 and the announcement of Fisen, the next game by Kojima, like late at that State of Play. Plus another look at Judas, Rise of the Ronin, getting a little bit more gameplay there. So it was like, I thought that was one of the best State of Plays that they had done. So in comparison, this is more, once again, a little bit of like a step down. I have been saying that the last two State of Plays were better than like what the showcase from last May was, especially because of the heightened expectations of them finally doing a showcase again after going dormant for like an entire year. So in comparison, this State of Play definitely felt like slightly better for me, but it's still more kind of like in the vein of the State of Plays that makes a lot of people kind of like roll their eyes when Sony announces a State of Play, because they know that they're always excited when they talk about showcases. And their inconsistency in doing showcases can be like really frustrating for some people. So they will remain like that until a state of play like overall feels like vital. But I still don't want to like downplay this one too much, because this one is like feels more like an acquired taste what was shown there, and I'm definitely gonna give some of my thoughts of what was shown there as I kind of read through it. So the first thing that they opened it up was a look at Concord. So for people that don't remember Concord, this was one of the live service games that was actually announced at last year's showcase. But the announcement for Concord last year was kind of horrible, when the only thing that we got was kind of like a nondescript CG trailer that didn't tell you at all what that game was. It only said the name Concord and that it was coming out this year for PS5 and PC. And the only thing that you would know about Concord is that it's been done by it is not Firesprite, this is Firewalk Studios, which is like the team that has some former Bungie employees in it. So you kind of had to like infer that they were doing a first-person shooter just based on like the pedigree that was in it. But what kind of shooter? We only knew that it was going to be one of the live service games that PlayStation was cooking when they originally had that 12 live service plan that we talked about earlier in this episode. And so what it is like a 5v5 multiplayer shooter that has a lot of Overwatch / Valorant look to it. It has a tone that's very similar to Guardians of the Galaxy. So you can like make jokes of, we got Guardians of the Galaxy at home, based on how it looks, because it's kind of like an original take on that kind of tone, and also the writing is that. And kind of like the thing that they want to make unique is that this being like a 5v5 game, they are saying that they want to do like a lot of week-to-week narrative, like doing like cutscenes and all that, like that kind of like punts every time that you log into that game every week. And some of the gameplay is like, it looked fine. It's like multiplayer, like PvP only shooters are not my cup of tea. I am more of a PvE guy when it comes to like live service stuff. This kind of PvP shooter is like only fun for me for like maybe 30 minutes at most, or if I'm actually having a good time like playing it with friends, which is rare nowadays. But at least now we know what this is. There's gonna be like a beta in July, and it's actually coming out on August 23rd, which is 7 days after my birthday. So it's actually much sooner than I was expecting. So that's like one of the two big PlayStation Studios games that are coming like for the later half of the year. The other one is in September. I'm gonna read that a little later, which is to me personally a little bit more exciting. But yeah, we finally got to see Concord. Not my kind of game, but it's finally out there. I know some people thought it looked better than they was expecting. It kind of looked fun. For others are like, oh man, this is just looks generic. So that's kind of like the problem with doing that kind of live service game, that it's not gonna appeal to everyone, but their hope is that it's gonna appeal to someone. And if I want to look at holistically, PlayStation has been in need of like a first-party first-person shooter for like more than a decade. The last time they did a first-party shooter was Killzone Shadowfall at the PS4 launch, and then like they have not been doing any first-person shooters since then. Like they kind of ceded the shooter space to like the third parties, because they just became focused on their third-person narrative games. So as an advocate of me wanting the lineup for PlayStation to have more diversity, at least when it comes to first party, because it has become like such a joke that they only do the one kind of game, even though there's like differences within it, but it still kind of like fits a third person over the shoulder mold that's sometimes linear, that's sometimes open world, but it's still kind of that. And you could even see it in two of the published non-first party games of this year with both Rise of the Ronin and Stellar Blade. They were also kind of that. It's like, hey, at least they finally got a shooter. I wish it was a different kind of shooter from first party, but it's like, I'll take my wins where I get them when it comes to that. So yeah, Concord's out on August 23rd. I'm glad that it finally has a date. Then the next thing that they talked about was God of War Ragnarok coming to PC finally out on September 19th. So instead of having to wait 4 years for a PC port this time, the time has been kind of cut to close to the 2-year gap of when Ragnarok originally came out on PS5. So now it's out on, it's gonna be out on PC on the 19th. They announced unlimited frame rate, so for everyone that has like super beefy PCs, you're gonna be able to run that thing like super fast. They announced like a bunch of some of the popular technology and PC gaming right now, like DLSS, FSR, XESS. I don't know what XESS is, but I know AMD FSR and DLSS are like the upscaling technologies that are like super popular. That make games look like they're 4K even though they're not 4K. It's just great AI image reconstruction that sometimes looks better than the native thing. So the game's gonna support that. It's also gonna have ultra wide support. It's gonna have the Valhalla free DLC that came out last December baked in already into the thing, which to me it's fantastic. I actually like it better than the main thing. And it's gonna be out on September 19th, 2024. I had been like toying around doing a God of War Ragnarok replay finally after like all my thoughts about like my mixed thoughts about that game since I originally beat it in 2022. And though I will not be playing this on PC, I definitely want to do another run for Ragnarok. Now finally can take it through the New Game Plus mode because I feel like I owe it to that game considering how much 2018 means to me. So yeah, that's going to be out in September. But that's not the other September thing that I had mentioned. That's for much later. Then the next thing that they showed was Koei Tecmo revealing a new Dynasty Warriors game and Dynasty Warriors Origins that's coming out in 2025 for PS5. I assume this is not exclusive. I assume this is also going to be showing up over on Xbox. I could be wrong, but obviously this being a state of play, they only showed it as like a PS5 thing. Obviously Dynasty Warriors are Musos, so those kind of games for constant hack and slashing against millions of enemy armies coming at you. They have a very high energy niche where that they occupy in the market. That's where there's a lot of people that really like just kind of like the mindlessness of just like fighting a Musou. And this is definitely going to be the first next gen one of these. So I definitely can't wait to see how that goes for them. Then afterwards, they announced the first super weird but at least kind of quirky game of this show called Infinity Nikki, which definitely based on the name and kind of like the art style. I think this is one of the China Hero Project games that PlayStation has kind of like been investing right now in like all these nondescript areas that usually don't do games. So this is like one of those. It definitely felt like a Magic platformer with like some open world stuff. It's like definitely the art style, especially with like the main girl character, is very waifu-ish. That can seem a little off-putting for some people that don't have tolerance for this kind of thing. But to me, the only thing that gives me pause of this is that it says that they're releasing a test in Q3 2024. So every time that I hear this kind of language in anything that's announced, it gives me vibes of, oh, this is a gacha game, especially with the big China game being Genshin Impact, which this definitely doesn't quite, it definitely looks animated but doesn't quite look like Genshin. But since a lot of things that come out of China love the gacha, so it's like I feel this could be that. So that's kind of like the only thing that I'm like, I'm not sure about this, but it definitely looked beautiful. So I love me some like more bright colorful art styles to kind of like offset photorealism or more dark and gritty, really detailed stuff. I don't mind this existing, so let's see how that goes and or when this is officially out. Then one of the more interesting things that I enjoyed looking that I enjoyed from that they showed is like this clearly inspired Souls-like and a Sea of Souls-like called Ballad of Antara, which I think this is one of the Middle East or like India projects that also PlayStation had been investing, that we kind of mentioned it with Ains when we were talking about the Sony financials earlier in this episode, that is like that Sony's kind of like trying to touch all these different territories to try to get games out or maybe get support out of it. So, and this definitely feels like something that takes this inspiration of like like a From Software grit, but without like the gritty character models in it. And I like how the combat looked. There's always the danger that we're gonna get way too many of these games now that From Software has become so influential now, and how a lot of people do action games. But this was like this is a new interesting new entry franchise. I'm always gonna be down for that, and I definitely want to see what else makes this special whenever it comes out in 2025. Then we went into the tiny PSVR 2 block. I know a lot of people are wondering how many of the PSVR games shown here were gonna, or more like how many of the 14 titles that they pre-announced for this state of play, how many were gonna be PSVR games. So it was 2 of them. The first one was Behemoth from Skyden Studios, a game that is like a mix of Skyrim meets Shadow of the Colossus, and that actually looked really well polished. It looked like it had a level of scale to it that I saw Rick Ho kind of mentioning that it gave him some, how can I say this, some Asgard's Wrath like feelings, even though this is not Asgard's Wrath, which is kind of like the best VR game currently available on the market that is not Half-Life Alyx. So for people that have been wanting some more for PSVR 2, which has been feeling pretty dire when it comes to like at least big name games, or feeling like Sony's not like providing like the support for that device as it should, Behemoth definitely looks like that. Sorry, just taking my drink there because I'm still recovering from my sickness. And the other VR game was Alien Rogue Incursion, which if it's like a horror game like in the style of Alien Isolation in VR, that seems perfect. This feels like the kind of perfect big name IP use of the PSVR system, that if this can be like a non-25 hour game like Alien Isolation, I feel this could be like a really good use of the PSVR 2, which needs more of these kind of games. So that was what they talked about PSVR 2. So it's still not a full feature. I still feel that what Sony should do is they should maybe just do like a once a year PSVR centric state of play where it's just VR games. So that they don't always feel like there's always kind of like the hang ring in that the people that just want traditional games, they don't want PSVR stuff, but then there's the tiny PSVR community that wants games for them. So I feel like it would be better if they would have like a separate thing, kind of like how Nintendo does the Spotlight Indies thing. And yeah, it's like this actually looks cool. Can't wait to hear from the people that had the PSVR 2, like what they think of it. So then the other we got another look at the Marvel Rivals game, which is the NetEase Overwatch style game that is like that flies a little too close to the sun of looking so much like Overwatch without being like copyright infringement. But this was announced just for PC a few weeks ago, and now this is finally confirmed for console. So I assume this is not just on PlayStation; it's also gonna be on Xbox. And they announced a closed beta that I don't know when it's gonna go out. And they actually did announce that there's going to be a PS5 exclusive skin for Scarlet Spider if you play as Spider-Man here, of course. Everything with Spider-Man always gets an exclusive stuff here for Marvel. So yeah, I wonder when was the closed beta for this thing? Oh yeah, it's another closed beta also happening in July. So the closed beta for or was it open beta for Concord? But anyway, betas for both of the similar looking games are happening in July, so I'm gonna try it. Like it doesn't hurt just to try it. So, and I did like Overwatch briefly when I played the original one. I didn't like the second one as much, or I had kind of already moved on by then. Then we got another game that also has a little bit of a Souls-like look to it. This is from China. This is a game called Where Winds Meet, that has also like a very surreal samurai fantasy look to it, that also has its Souls-like combat. No news of when this is coming out, but this is also kind of like a reinforcement of Sony getting games from like all these territories. So that's the people are making the deal that where Winds Meet and Ballad of Antara were basically being shown the same game twice. So I definitely I can totally see that, even with some key differences to the art style. And what's funny is that when I was watching this, and I was like in the Season Gaming chat when we were discussing some of these things as they were being announced, I kept saying, "Oh yeah, this is Phantom Blade Zero, the game that was announced at the showcase last year." And what's funny is like Phantom Blade Zero didn't show up at all in the thing, or unless it changed names. Who knows? Maybe that's what happened. But yeah, I was like, I kept saying, "Oh yeah, this is Phantom Blade Zero." I was like, "Oh no, so this is another one. Okay, cool, new game." So. Then we got another look at the Until Dawn remake coming this fall to PS5 and PC. Obviously, I think this is one of the most unnecessary remakes that exists, because the PS4 version already looks really good, and with the FPS it being like an unlocked frame rate game, playing it on PS5 already runs that game at 60 FPS, and it using Decima Engine already look really good. Like, especially for a 2015 game. Definitely, this remake when it was announced at the State of Play in January, and then they kind of gave the description of that they made it more of an over-the-shoulder adventure than the angles, the manipulative angles that were more like classic survival horror, but still with a heavy rain slant to it. That was the PS4 version, and it being on Unreal Engine 5 instead of being on Decima. This is just them reminding us that this is coming. And the only reason why this is coming is because they announced that they're doing a movie. And with PlayStation, they're loving their synergy. If you know that they can make something a movie, they're definitely going to bring a game back. So I'm still of the mind that, like, for example, the God of War Amazon show, when that's coming out, since they're also basing it on the North side of the series and not the Greek side, they're going to find a way to re-release that God of War 2018 game on PS5. I bet top dollar on that. So that they can, because we know that's kind of like what's happening with the Horizon remake, that shockingly was not here. I bet that will be there when we get something else later this year, because we usually hear Sony speak 3 times a year, whether it's a showcase or a state of play. So, and I know we all know that PS5 Pro is coming, so there's like a scuttlebutt that maybe why we didn't get a showcase now is because they're saving everything for when they reveal the Pro in September, around the other time which Sony usually speaks. And for people that remember, 2016 September was when PlayStation 4 Pro was announced, for like a 2-month lead time for whenever that console was released in November. So with that console clearly happening, that's probably also what's happening. And maybe they're gonna save a bunch of guns and be like, here's the PS5 Pro, and now with the release of this souped up console, here's the list of everything that's coming, or that at least is coming in the near term. This is just at least one would think, with this new Sony, especially a Sony that as of 2 days from now will have new leadership finally take on the CEO role. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, Until Dawn, coming soon. I'll see if I play it. My thing with Until Dawn is that I will always cherish playing this in college, with being an RA in my floor and bringing a lot of people from my floor like to watch me play this game, and we were all kind of like making decisions together and having kind of like that communal experience. That's something that I still cherish a lot when I played it back in 2015, that I don't think I can recreate nowadays. So we'll see. It's like, I mean, coming back. I can't wait to see what the price is and how the PC version is, especially because one of the most the coolest parts of doing Until Dawn was like when you're having to hold the controller like super straight, and those like hold your breath moments. So Until Dawn coming. And then Path of Exile 2 was also shown here. I don't think it was in a state of play before. I think it was in a Jeff Keighley showcase before. I could be wrong, but yeah, they showed us a little bit of an extended look at gameplay for Path of Exile 2. It looks really pretty. It definitely is gonna give Diablo 4 a run for its money as a good alternative of a asymmetric top-down ARPG that's also looter. Obviously, I've heard some scuttlebutt about the way that Path of Exile does its loot feels different from Diablo. That's why a lot of people prefer Diablo. I was reading that in the chat for that had over a season gaming, that I was like, okay, but yeah, this is one that I remember Travis was gonna cover, and I think he's still gonna cover this one. And they announced that the early access is later this year, and they announced things like couch co-op, crossplay, and cross progression. So, and then we got another look at the Silent Hill 2 remake that we also got a look of earlier this year, which earlier this year I only said that it was in development for PS5, which a lot of people are like, if you say that it's just in development, this thing may be a little far off then. But now it came back. And what's funny is that this also, kind of like we talked about earlier, or maybe later, depending on when I'm cutting, I've already forgot when I did this, is like, yeah, this was kind of like the 1-2 punch for Silent Hill, where they showed us a brief story trailer that gave us the release date for October 8th, 2024. And then we got the Silent Hill transmission thing that happened like 30 minutes after the state of play was done, where we got an extended, uncut look at the game that, if I'm pretty honest, that's the thing that finally did it for me. Seeing it uncut and seeing that it's not like a constant action thing, that there's more of a mood setting, there's more like pensive sections that feel very reminiscent to like what Silent Hill 2 is. I never really played, but I've seen a lot of Silent Hill 2. In fact, I got to see former EC Allies, now LSM member Brad Ellis stream an entire playthrough of Silent Hill 2 as he was playing the 360 version that came in the HD collection, the one that has Comic Sans font that kind of ruined a lot of places of that game's art direction and art design for like its world building. And definitely that extended look feels like it's more in tune to the tone of that original one, or at least the pace of that I know a lot of people that were a little bit more apprehensive for Silent Hill 2, this Silent Hill 2 remake, now are a little bit more on board. So out on October 8th, 2024. This is a PS5 exclusive, so that's kind of like what Sony's doing for the rest of this year as their first party. Is kind of like still cooking, and most of them are not going to be ready until like after April 2025, according to Hiroki Totoki, what he mentioned. But like I have been saying like all this year, and I was mentioning to Ains, is like saying that the PS5 has nothing is like completely missing the forest for the trees. It's not just about first party. It's like you have to look at a console's exclusive lineup, whether it comes from first, second, or third party, and definitely their second and third parties are definitely filling in the void for them. In fact, they had quite a lot from second and third party this year, which is kind of nuts. So everyone that's in that ecosystem definitely has been fed well, even if everything that they have been putting out in that second and third party exclusive is not like the super high tier, but it's still something. So, and you have to like understand that not everything is gonna be like an S tier. You have to like make do with B or A plus stuff, like once in a while. So how this will land, who knows? But hey, finally I got to say that I'm more curious with Silent Hill 2, because it was like visually it looked kind of iffy. It just didn't feel up to par to the remake quality that we have been getting with a bunch of the horror stuff. So this time I'm like, cool. No, at least I'm a little bit more curious and hopeful that this can actually turn out good. Even though Bluebird Team is not the kind of studio that engenders that kind of like safety net, if you think about that. Then the second to last announcement, not quite an announcement, it was just more like an extended gameplay look at Monster Hunter Wilds, which was revealed. It was one of the last things that Jeff Keighley revealed at the Game Awards this past year. Obviously, a sequel to an official console sequel to Monster Hunter World, because Monster Hunter Rise was then the follow-up Monster Hunter game that was just originally just on Switch and PC, and then eventually they ported that experience to the rest of the consoles. But this is kind of like the next mainline big console entry, and the way it looked, where they were promising a more seamless open world monster slaying that is not kind of like broken into like the different sections, kind of like how Monster Hunter is. It looked pretty impressive. It's like I remember how addicting the loop could get with Monster Hunter World when that game clicked for you, and a lot of the things that I did enjoy of this year's big Capcom game, Dragon's Dogma 2, was like sometimes in the mess of that combat, in the things that I played with it, a lot of those big battles reminded me a lot of Monster Hunter, but it also had a lot of ass backwards things that didn't make me enjoy it as much as when I remember playing Monster Hunter World, and seeing a bunch of this stuff was like, yeah, this thing will be huge. This thing will be good. And when will this be out in 2025? My bet, as tradition dictates, either January or March, because Capcom never releases anything on February. So really excited to see how that looks. And obviously, like Capcom and PlayStation, they always Capcom is such a mercenary that they'll always use stage time to see what they announce over at either Xbox or PlayStation. And of course, with this tiny show, we got Monster Hunter. So I was hoping we were gonna get Resident Evil 9, because there was like some listings that happened today, which was a weird timing. I was like, at least we're over on Play Asia. It's like physical versions for Code Veronica X, Resident Evil 5, and a Resident Evil 9 Shadows thing. I don't remember what Revenant Shadow, I think is what that was called. I'm like, Play Asia is like a legit distributor for like physical goods, especially from things over in Japan, and the people that love doing physical stuff still to this day. That I was kind of surprised that I was like, okay, no Resident Evil today. Oh, but at least we got Monster Hunter. So, and last but not least, this was rumored a few weeks ago. Came from reputable sources. I was hoping, against all hope, that this was gonna be real, because the tech demo that was on the PS5 was so delightful. And we were talking about, I was mentioning with Ains that all those rumors pointing to this was like so exciting, and yep, it finally happened. It's actually trending right now in the gaming what's happening trend in Twitter for me. Astrobot is back. It's only called Astrobot, and it's a legit big meaty 3D platformer. So no more tech demo or no more smaller VR side bencher. This is actually like a legit fully featured platformer that this little delightful robot deserved. And this was a trailer that brought me so much joy looking at it, because it's like Astro's Playroom had no right being as good as it was, touching like my inner like fanboy of being like a fan of the PlayStation brand like for so long, where references from things from all the way from the PS1 till now, from both hardware and like IP, some of it dormant, some of my favorite games ever, is there represented there. And it's coming out this year on September 6th. I don't know what the price will be. I hope it's right. I hope maybe it's I hope it's not a $70 game. I hope against all hope that it's not that, because I feel this is a game that deserves maybe that $50 or $60 price point to be proliferated, especially for like all the people that I was looking at the trophy data for how many people play through the levels of Astro's Playroom, how many people platinumed it, and I was showing it to Paul. It's like the amount of people that play that thing is insane, because it's like one could think it's like, oh yeah, this is like a cool tech demo. Maybe they just play like an hour and that was it, but the data doesn't show that. It's like this has one of the most insane like completion rates that you kept seeing from a packing game, because it's like it's very easy to think of like Wii Sports. That was pretty fun, and that was mostly like what kept that fun was like the idea of you doing multiplayer matches, maybe with like your family. There's my dog. And this one was like I remember when they had mentioned it was going to be like a packing game that was like, going to be more of a tech demo. I thought it was just going to be like an hour thing, but the fact that it was like a 4 or 5 hour game that you could like replay over and over for like higher scores and maybe get a platinum trophy on top of that, and how it celebrated the brand, which PlayStation as a brand has not been really good, especially under the Jim Ryan era, to celebrate its past. It always felt like it was always moving forward and forward into less creative pastures, and Astrobot just has that level of creativity that, to me, I don't mind the existence of Sony's overly cinematic, pretentious third-person open over-the-shoulder story games, because I enjoy a lot of those games, but I've also known that it's like that's just the only game that they have kept making over and over and over again, and it's time for them to add a little spice here and there. And I feel Astrobot adds that kind of like quirk that has been missing in that system, especially because the reason why Nintendo's so big is because it appeals to everyone. And PlayStation, if they really want to keep appealing to more people, they just cannot just try to play like in the dark and gritty areas. As well received as those games are for critics, like these are the kinds of games that you need to kind of like have balance in your portfolio. In fact, like I feel this strengthens the rest of your portfolio if you have this kind of game. And I'm really hoping that if they can get at least half of the people that got to beat Playroom as a free game, this could be like really successful if they don't screw the push with pricing. And I've seen that trailer already 3 or 4 times. I get a huge smile on my face. This thing is so close. It feels good seeing a PlayStation first party game be officially announced and confirmed for the same year. That rarely happens. And I know that Herman Holz had mentioned that's kind of what they want to do, because we saw the opposite happen on the PS4 era, where it was a lot of waiting because they announced so many stuff like so early. And then every showcase we kept getting was always repeats. And I'll never forget like the amazing E3 2016 conference that announced basically the rest of that generation. And then we got to see repeats in 2017 that had no dates at the time. We're like, what the frick? It's like, why are you showing again and we still don't know like an idea of when these games are coming out? It's like getting a release date is always super exciting. And the joy that I got to see in my timeline of everyone celebrating Astrobot being here, even ignoring some of like the stupid comments from random bots that you can see, is like, I just love how embraced Astrobot is. It's kind of like this quirky, like makes a smile kind of game that I'm so glad that this basically punctuates first party for the rest of this year as we wait for the more big budget stuff to come out like from April 25th onward. So This Asteroid was definitely the thing that elevated the state of play a little bit more, even as I appreciate kind of like the variety that we have what we had here. But I also feel that this state of play definitely less content than the one that came out in January. Let me see if I can pull up. Let me see, because I wrote it in my chat with Paul and Sebastian, like what were some of the games that were like in the state of play. Just give me so yeah, like for example, like in the last state of play, we got Stellar Blade, the Sonic Shadow Generation Shadow reveal. We got another look at Zenless Zone Zero, which recently got a release date for early July. Foam Stars was there, which has now finally come and gone. Dave the Diver, Via Rising, both Silent Hill games, Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill The Short Message, Judas from Ken Levine, Metro Awakening and Legendary Tales as the VR games, and our look at Dragon's Dogma 2, which a lot of people like, obviously I don't like it as much as others, Rise of the Ronin, which I really like, the Until Dawn remake, which was whatever, and the amazing Death Stranding 2 trailer and the announcement of Physant. So obviously that state of play had a lot to it, which makes this one definitely feel more anemic in comparison. So definitely that's where it's more of a step back. But I don't think it was bad. There was still something here. And Astrobot is not like probably my most anticipated game for the rest of the year. Like top when I think about it, now that I moved on from Rebirth, which is still my game of the year. So can't wait to play that Astrobot. It's like I'm just glad to see unanimous praise for a 3D platformer, or like a unanimous excitement for a 3D platformer that's not just Mario. And I love Mario, and I feel that's a area of games that shouldn't just be dominated by Mario. We need more competition, and I'm really hoping that Ainsley's desire is true and Banjo-Kazooie actually comes back in the Xbox showcase, because I would love a platformer from them too that's not just Super Lucky Stale. So that was my pickup for the state of play. So we're gonna resume the episode as it was originally recorded.
Nice. Okay. So but yeah, Silent Hill 2 I'm pumped for. That's one of my favorite horror games ever made. I think Silent Hill 2 is generally considered one of the top,
from
5 to 10
specifically, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's been a very long time since I played it, so I hope Bloober Team does it justice. But that's definitely one I'm pumped for, no doubt.
Yeah, Bloober Team is always like an interesting one, because Layers of Fear was interesting. The medium was a little bit more like hit or miss for me, even though kind of like a lot of the medium was like, I could see how Konami would then see like what you did here and be like, oh yeah, it's like maybe you're good like for Silent Hill. Specifically some things they did with like perspective and kind of like the word changing. I'm like, there's some Silent Hill like taste here, but even though the medium wasn't great overall. So I'm just excited for showcase season to be here now finally, because this is always a good time. So that's gonna be the Thursday, and then next Friday will be Keely's thing. Then Sunday is gonna be the Xbox showcase. IGN Live is doing their thing, like from like that Friday to Sunday. That'll be interesting. Ubisoft on Monday, and then I can't wait to see when you'll be able to talk about some embargo stuff that we're not gonna talk about.
Yeah, I've got God, it's gonna be super busy. I arrive on Thursday. We've got Summer Game Fest Friday. We're going to IGN starts Friday as well. I've got appointments on Saturday. I think I'm seeing Assassin's Creed on Saturday, like getting the full hands on. And then I've got other appointments on Saturday. I think I just locked in another one. I don't even know if I can mention it. I've got it right here. Hold on. Embargo will be set for later in June. Okay, can't mention that one. So I've got another appointment Saturday, and then Sunday's Xbox. And then Sunday night, Giant Bomb is doing
the night they're like
their nighttime event, which I got invited to, which is pretty cool. And then Monday's Ubisoft, and then I've got hands-on with Star Wars Outlaws and something else that's been embargoed from Ubisoft too. So we'll see what that's all about. I'm pumped.
I'm not confirming anything here. This is just my speculation. I'm hoping it's Splinter Cell.
I think everyone's really hoping it's Splinter Cell. Yeah.
Because my theory is they announced that remake back in December 2021. Assassin's Creed Shadows has a light shadow stealth system from Splinter Cell. Ubisoft is the kings of, if they have a mechanic in one game, it somehow is gonna show up in another game.
It's
so
true.
I'm like, it feels like it's time. Like it does feel like it's time for that franchise to come back that hasn't seen an entry in 10 years and counting, because in August it will be 11 years with Blacklist. So.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. I hope so. We'll see. they haven't. There's not even a hint of what it is. So we'll find out.
Yeah, which is wild. So
yeah.
And with that, James, that's the news headlines that I have for this week because of when we're recording. And now I'm gonna read us the games that are coming out for the week of June 2nd to June 8th. So the first game coming out there is Destiny 2: The Final Shape, coming to PS5, Series X, PS4, Xbox One, and PC on June 4th. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the game, the non-early access, comes out on June 4th for PS5, Series X, and PC. Oh, I forgot to mention that I got to play that with Zach and Travis.
He told me. It's awesome.
Yeah, kind of like in the early times. It was funny because and I knew Zach was gonna review it, and then Travis was like, I need to fill up these lobbies because the review times are stupid. You want to go? I was like, sure, I'll play this. You can go read Zach's review now over at Season Gaming.
Yep.
There's a Star Wars Hunters as the Switch, iOS, Android multiplayer game also coming out on June 4th. Assassin's Creed Mirage comes to iOS on June 6th. That's an interesting one because this is going to be one of those having the full fledged game on the iPhone 15, I think. So that comes out on June 6th. And then, that's pretty much it for that week. These are the games coming out during showcase season, basically. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and Destiny 2: The Final Shape is definitely gonna be the thing that I'm gonna be playing. So
I think a lot of people are gonna be. I think that's gonna hit some records because it's just all the build up, all the hype, all the people who have enjoyed Destiny at some point are gonna want to see this kind of thing, and be part of it. So it's gonna be big.
I don't know if you noticed that the player counts for Destiny went up during this Into the Light period, that the free update that they added in April. As there, we got to do something because we delayed this DLC and we cannot just do emptiness for 3 extra months. And that update really re-energized the community a lot. On top of the showcase they did for the Final Shape, when they revealed that it was actually more ambitious of an expansion that it originally seemed last year.
Right.
When everyone saw it, was this is the end, and it feels not too robust what you're showing. It feels very subdued. It's not. We're not feeling the hype. And that latest showcase was the one that re-energized a lot of people. It certainly did me. I was playing it. I've been playing it just getting all of my seasonal stuff cleaned up and in the road for this thing to launch. So awesome. I can't wait. And then at least I get to just enjoy it this time. Steve's gonna review it. I can't wait to see how he likes it.
Yeah. You, Eric, and Steve are definitely the Destiny crew. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what you guys think, and of course Travis will be all over it too. So
I want to see if I can try to get him in the show again, so we can talk. About it.
I think you guys should all get together and do it for sure.
Yeah. And with that, Ames, that brings us to the conclusion for this week's episode of the X-Pod. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so Ains, you can kind of find me given my name pretty much anywhere. So I'm on Twitter, Threads, social media everywhere, obviously seasongaming.com and everything we do. So you can find our channel, you can find the site, you can find the Bitcast every Sunday morning live and then on the site as well. But yeah, you can find Alex and all the great contributors over at SG. So just check out the site, all the information there, all the links you need, all our reviews and everything else. And then join our Discord. So Season Gaming Discord, I think we broke 150 members now, and a lot of good people on there, good conversation, nothing too ultra controversial, just chatting about games. So if you enjoy chatting about games with some more down to earth people and baseline people, then hit us up. But other than that, man, thanks for having me on. I'm glad we got to finally do this.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's been fun. Hopefully I can have you at some time in the future for anything more pertaining for you, maybe for Elden Ring, Shadow of the Earth Tree.
Let's do it.
The panel. Let's see how that one goes. And then you can find me on Twitter /X at _Dorsegovia. And then you can find me on Threads /Instagram at AlejandroSegovia93. And obviously you can find my old written content on my own website, thecriticalcorner.com, and then my current written content over the last 2 years over at seasongaming.com. Over there, you can find my reviews for this year for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, Skull and Bones, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Final Fantasy XVI The Rising Tide, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Arcade, and Stellar Blade. And hopefully, let's see if I can finish Paper Mario on time. That could be my next one. Will depend. I've been this sickness has kept my energy low for that one. There's a lot of reading to do in that one. So yeah. And everyone, thank you so much for listening to this and watching this week's episode. If you like what you listen or watch, give us a like, leave us a review, tell us what we were right or what we were wrong. What are you thinking of? What's happening in the video game industry with this next showcase is happening? And with that, we thank you so much. You all have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Ains, for joining me, and you all have a great rest of your day.